Ella Barnard, it is a delight to have you on this show. Thank you for playing with us in the 31-day Good Vibration Challenge. How are you today?
Well, I'm very good and I'm very happy to be here.
Thank you so much. I would like all of our listeners and viewers to know that that Ella is the owner of the Author Boss Academy, and she manages the Author Like a Boss Facebook group. And what else do you do, darling?
And the podcast,
Oh, yeah.
and I'm a cat owner
Oh,
and a reader.
yes, that's really important.
Yes.
That's one of the ways we keep our vibration high, isn't it? By having loving animals and fur to stroke. And
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely.
a cat's purr is scientifically proven to balance the human energy field.
I believe it. And you don't even have to, it doesn't even have to be scientifically proven.
Personal experience, don't we?
Yes.
So, how did you come to enjoy helping authors find out how to do better work and to get their work known?
Well, when I was younger, I loved reading. In fact, I've always loved reading, but I was always wondering, like, how can I start a business where I can just read? Like, what kind of job is there where I can just read for my job? And because reading was my escape. Reading was where everything was okay. That's where I would go. And as I got older, I didn't go after that. I had a troubled childhood. Lots of people do. And so I ended up doing what was kind of expected of me, or I was trying to meet expectations that were not my own.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't even know, I couldn't even tell you exactly where they came from, although some from my parents, some from society, some from, just family.
Mm-hmm.
So I ended up, I went to college, and um, then I became an administrative assistant.
Okay.
And then I was a teacher, and then I was, I did those things that I thought I was supposed to do. I went into those jobs that I thought I was supposed to do, and then I was miserable. And eventually, as I got older, I was like, I don't want to spend like the bulk of my waking hours doing something that I don't enjoy. This isn't fun. Like, takes a huge chunk of time, and I'm not really enjoying this, and I'm smarter than a lot of the people I'm working for. So,
Which is often the case.
yeah, I was like, I would do this so different and it would be better. And so then I was like, well, I really want to help people. Because if you look at things, there's a lot of things for entrepreneurs. I'm very passionate about entrepreneur stuff, and I read a bunch of books, and they kept saying, well, what do people come to you for? Because that's a good way to find out what you could sell, like what you could start a business with. And I didn't have anything that was really specific. I wasn't like, oh, people always ask me about knitting, or people always ask me about, I didn't have anything like that. What people come to me for, it took me a while to figure it out. Yeah. People come to me when they're not feeling good and they want to feel better.
Oh, wow. That's a biggie.
Yeah. People come to me when they're like, oh, this is a challenge. And then they want to feel better about it, and they want to have some kind of way to take action, or, settle down and get back into themselves instead of being all like, ah! And so once I figured that out, it was a matter of, okay, well, what are my passions, and how can I utilize that?
Mm-hmm.
How can I utilize the strength that I have, which is very nebulous. It's not like, I can make you feel good.
Maybe. Interpreted a lot of different ways.
Yes, too. I know. So then it was like, okay, how can I do that? And I love creative people. I love women. I love helping women have the opportunities that they never, maybe, like, were women who were in the same spot I was, where I didn't know all the possibilities that were out there.
Yes.
I didn't know that it was possible to make money doing what you love. Nobody told me that. And there's all these women who want to be creative and have these beautiful things like writing. It could be art, it could be whatever, but what I'm really passionate about and what I love is reading. So it was a natural thing for me, like, let me help these women, mostly women. I could help men too, but mostly women are attracted to me. And that's mostly who I appeal to and who I want to help. Because I think we have less opportunities and we give ourselves less opportunities. And so that's what I'm doing. I get to help women feel good about themselves and gain confidence, because that actually is the biggest challenge these days between being successful or being willing to put yourself out there. It's not the technical aspects. Those are all doable and learnable and getting easier every day. It's the mental aspects of, is this possible for me? And I am really excellent at making it possible.
Well, my experience with you verifies that that is the truth.
I found what I'm good at.
Yes. You found what you're good at. And it's something that many authors have a hard time with, which is marketing themselves, putting themselves out there, believing in their work. And I think you've already discussed an issue that is a very important one for women especially, and that is becoming a pleaser, because we're trained to give ourselves away. We're trained not to think of anything that we want to do, but to be at the beck and call of the people around us. And that may have been done kindly or not so kindly. But the point is that everyone, especially all the people who are watching this video, everyone has gifts and value, and we all need that, especially right now, especially with the state of the world. And I'd like to speak also to the wonderful men that are in the Author Boss Academy, Author Like a Boss, and also on this Good Vibe Challenge, because my experience is the kind of men that show up for this sort of thing have huge hearts. They want to help. They're extremely supportive of women, and they understand how men have dominated in a negative way, but they're not like that. And they would like to see that reversed. So this is a community where people can really let their hair down, feel safe, and talk about the things that might keep them down when we really want to rise up.
Mm-hmm. I love men.
I love men.
Yeah. I love men. And you know that about me, Barbara.
I do. And I know you have a very loving, sexy husband. So.
Oh my gosh, I do. I love men. I just, for me particularly, I think there's a lot in this particular industry. There's a lot of men already helping other men, especially with entrepreneurs. There's a lot of guys out there crushing it, and it's harder. It's not impossible, but it's harder to find the women who are doing the things in a feminine way, which might appeal to some men as well.
Exactly.
So it's not exclusive. It's just, I like to focus on a different aspect, or the feminine aspect, because there's already so much masculine, but I'm not against the masculine. I just am like, well, I'm going to stand here for the feminine, because.
Absolutely. And I think you're right. I think that the men that are drawn to this kind of work are very interested in learning or doing things in the feminine way, which is less linear, less competitive. It's circular, it's spiral, it's community based. We help each other, and I think everybody's happier.
Yeah. Yes.
And when we encounter these kinds of issues, it can make or break how we feel. If we're let's say as a woman who decides that she's going to go for it with whatever her art form is, she wants to make, or let's say she's supporting a family and she needs to make a certain amount of money, and she needs to do it in a way that doesn't stress her out so much she gets cancer and dies and abandons all the people she loves. So that's what this vibe challenge is about. How do you keep yourself feeling good? How do you keep motivated to do the things in front of you?
It's a big question, Barbara.
No, that's what we're asking
I
everybody who's
love it.
here.
There's a number of things. It's not there's not just one thing.
Right.
There's not just one thing that works. I have a history of in my family, we have a history of depression as a mental illness. So a while ago, I I realized that there's certain things that work best for me not to be depressed. So
Oh,
I try to incorporate those things are very concrete so that I maintain as close to healthy mentally as I can, which includes getting enough sleep.
yes, that's really important.
Like basic things. I mean, they're not like crazy things, some of them. They're pretty basic. Like if I don't get enough sleep, it's not good for my mental health. Um, so getting enough sleep, listening to good music, sunshine.
Mhm.
Sunshine really helps. I'm living in Idaho. It's much harder for me than when I was living in California, and I'm trying to facilitate being able to access sunshine when I need it.
Right.
Um, and then the other way, so those are probably the three primary ways. Oh, also spending time with people who are in the similar space to me of creativity and positivity.
Right.
So having people like the Author Boss Academy who are motivated and positive and creating things and spending time with those people regularly is very good, and purposefully setting times to spend time with them, not just like offhand when it happens to happen,
Okay.
making sure to
Yeah.
deliberately set those times so that I get regular interactions with the people that I really enjoy spending time with. Um, and then, so that's, I'm kind of going like big to little, like these are the big things for the general mental health and good vibrations. And then specifically around, day to day, waking up, working on my business, getting things done, doing things that are scary and feeling good about it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I have created a practice or a habit of completing.
Completing. Oh, say more about that.
Yeah. So I used to be a perfectionist. And there's a difference between perfectionist and excellence. Okay? So there's a difference. And I used to be a perfectionist and now I like excellence, which are two different things, but I think we get them mixed up in our heads pretty often. I certainly did. And so when I was a perfectionist, I spent a lot of time researching things and thinking about things and learning about things and not actually doing the things and completing the things because I wanted them to be perfect.
Yeah.
And if you've read Brene Brown's, I think,
Love her.
I know the gifts of imperfection. So I was like, oh, people put off, is it the gifts of imperfection? That's our first one, right?
I think so.
I think so too.
Every
Whatever. If it's not Brene Brown, there is a book called The Gifts of Imperfection and it's lovely. But I used to want, set the standard of perfection. And then what happens is people who do this, and I'm not the only one, they never do the thing. They never actually take action because they know that they won't actually meet the perfection.
Yeah.
And so then they feel like a failure because they didn't meet that perfect thing that they knew they envisioned. And so they're constantly in competition with this abstract ideal of perfection, me, and therefore never willing to take action because I never want to be below it.
Exactly. So they never finish what they start.
Yes, never. I never finished what I started, or I never even started because I was very scared.
Yes.
Now I have a habit of completing, and it was a challenge to create that habit. It wasn't like I'm just going to complete everything I do. It was like, okay, I'll tell you one thing that really helped for me is doing the Facebook Lives, scheduling Facebook Lives on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm.
One, they're unedited.
Right. No redos.
2, people are waiting for me to do them.
Yes.
And 3, I have to show up every time, and they're not going to be perfect. They're live.
Right.
There's no way to be perfect when you're live because you're not going to be polished.
Yeah.
And so starting that, trusting myself that I'm going to be okay. I'm older now, so I've had more experience that I'm like, oh, lots of things have happened to me in my life. Lots of really terrible things have happened to me in my life, and I'm still okay. And that means that I can, rather than having things happen to me and reacting and trying to deal with it and be okay, at this point, I'm in a space in my life, fortunately, with an amazing husband. I'm in a home that I, enjoy. I'm in a safe space. So now, instead of reacting to troubling and challenging things that are happening to me, I get to proactively create the challenges that I want to deal with, which are doing new things.
Right.
And now I'm in a habit of completing. Now I feel really uncomfortable if I'm not doing something new and challenging, because I'm like, hey, I'm still okay. Evidence suggests that I'll be okay.
Yes, and that's a good place to be. And
Oh, yeah.
I agree with something else you said. It's lovely to be a little bit older, to have experience, to know that it may feel like you're dying, but you're not going to die.
Mm-hmm.
And I also agree about the Facebook Lives, that just showing up and knowing you're going to be imperfect. You're not a movie star, even if you had the perfect makeup job, and all the people that a movie star does, they don't do everything right.
Mm-mm.
And actually, I think people are more comfortable with real people, which means they like to see our faults. They like to see my hair kind of messed up, and
Mm-hmm.
maybe they're going to notice I have a few wrinkles here and there, and it's like, oh my God, people might think I'm old. Well, do I have? And it also puts you into a more compassionate place with your viewers, your audience,
Mm-hmm.
because you realize they're not a mob that's out to get you with pitchforks and torches.
Mm-hmm.
They're really tuning in because they believe that you have something valuable to share.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's made it a lot easier for me.
It's the first couple times, and then when you realize people actually like your imperfections.
Yes.
Like I remember asking, I don't remember if I asked you, but I remember asking, what do you think my brand is? And this was a little while ago. And people were like, crazy hair, dragons, and cats. And I was like, I'm okay with that, because my hair is not something that I like. It is like this.
Yeah.
and it's me. And I was like, okay, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that brand, and people like it.
Yes.
Which is nice.
And it's something that you give all the people that you work with, is this real clear role model that you don't have to be perfect. Don't even try. It kills you. Go on and just do it. So
yeah.
So thank you for that, because
Thank you. You guys can see right now, I'm modeling what I'm good at right now, and not being perfect here on this video. I'm like, my hair, my background, I want to paint these walls.
Yes. And we're just people having a life, doing the best we can to make a contribution to the world.
Yes.
So you alluded to having some hard times.
Yes.
When you have a hard time like that, from the perspective that you have now as a wise woman, how do you manage it?
A number of things. I recognize my triggers now.
Identify it.
Yep. I've identified, like, I'm old enough and experienced enough to know that I have certain things that I will react strongly to. Like, that I will have a strong reaction to. So I really don't like when I've set up, like, one time I set up an interview for a podcast, and it was a really pretty big name, like a big name. and I was a half an hour late to the time because I don't remember what I was doing, but something. I was doing something. And my phone wasn't in the same room, which is what I usually use to remind myself of when. And it was pretty early on in the podcast. So I didn't, in the history of the podcast. So I wasn't as experienced with paying attention and making sure. And that's not showing up when other people have showed up. Like when we have an agreement, like that's a big trigger for me. And not like I immediately am like, I'm a loser, I'm a failure. I'm the worst kind of person. Like I really get really hard on myself. Mm-hmm. And so what I do is I just have to remind myself to be gentle with myself.
So basically you also have to forgive yourself for making a mistake.
Yes, I have to, and I had to do it quickly because I had to do this interview with the gentleman. He waited. He was kind enough to do it with me, even late. And I couldn't do an interview. It wouldn't be a good interview if I was sitting there chastising myself the entire time that we're chatting with him. Like it would be even more of a waste of his time if I was sitting there like feeling bad, because it wouldn't make it the best interview. And he's already giving me that time. So I had to do it really fast. And I'm like, okay, it's okay. People make mistakes. I make mistakes. That's part of completing things and putting yourself out there and doing new things is that I'm going to make mistakes. I usually journal. I do a lot of journaling.
Okay.
Journaling, because journaling is huge for me because that example is kind of a small example of a hard time. It's not a big one. There are other hard times that are bigger and harder. That's what she said. I'm sorry. I can't help it. Okay. Can't help it. I'm terrible. Okay. So when those difficult times happen, I journal. Hi, Pappy. Okay. So when I have like the really difficult times, I journal. Journaling is the way that I get to access my higher self. So I start writing down, and I start with where I'm at, like this happened. And then, and it's not type journaling. It's handwritten journaling.
That makes a difference because the connection in your brain to your hand is different.
Yes. And so I journal, and I just know from experience, like that's how I access my best self most easily and quickly when I'm in a rough time. So I just start writing, and all of a sudden I'm like, well, but this could also be true. And then I write myself into a better understanding. I'm able to, it's a way of venting. So I can let go of the stuff that is challenging. I'm like, this is how I feel right now. I get to acknowledge the pain or the anger or whatever it is. And then because it's written down, it's almost like, it's been acknowledged. It's been taken care of. I can let it go. Yeah. And then I get to access, and then it gradually, like my higher self, comes through and is like, here's another perspective you might like, or here's a lesson that you might be learning, or here's the contrast, and the benefit from that, from whatever this challenge is. And so that's how I get through the hard times, and a lot of hugs and naps.
Okay. Hugs are really important.
Yes.
Are really important. But what you've described is what's called in some spiritual traditions being the witness or being the observer, and having that ability to switch back and forth from the cosmic picture into the microcosmic picture. So from our soul's perspective over our whole life to this situation that has our heart bleeding right now, is valuable because you get to see the other information, just as you've described. You get to look at other scenarios and see how things could be different.
Yeah.
Do you have a vision for this year that has you all excited, or that will feel fabulous when it's real?
Uh, yes. Every year at the beginning of the year, I don't do resolutions, but I do create a checklist of things that I want to accomplish during the year. That I know that if these things happen by the end of the year, I
Mhm.
will feel really good. And they're broad enough to allow for universe, but they're specific enough for me to be intentional.
Mhm. Right.
So, growing my business is at the top of that list because I I care about my business on many levels. One, it brings me, abundance. Two, I get to help people and connect with people who I really care about and really get to help them. And then ultimately, like my big vision
Uh-huh.
is is I think creative people making money at what they're doing will transform the world. Um, I think it will transform the world to have creative and thoughtful people being successful financially.
Mhm.
So I would love to transform the world into a place where I would like to redefine power.
Okay.
My ultimate goal is to redefine power, because power is defined as having an influence over people and events. Like
Mhm.
if you have a significant influence over people and events. And right now, the power
Uh-huh.
is people, usually it's politicians and people with a lot of money who are not kind
Exactly.
and are not thoughtful and considering and cooperating and big picture and long thinking into the future. It's very like right anyway. So what I would love to do is help creative people be financially successful, because that's like the first step to redefining power is having different people with power.
Well, and they're going to spend their money differently.
Yes, because they'll spend their money differently. And I think artists and specifically authors are amazing for that, because every author, especially fiction authors, has literally put themselves in another person's shoes in order to write the characters that they're writing.
Yes.
Like, you have to imagine what it would be like to be someone else
Mhm.
and be in a different situation and live in a different situation in order to accurately and powerfully portray whatever it is that you're wanting to portray in your story. And so those kind of people having money and making purchases and putting their money where they feel it's the most valuable, I think would transform the world. So back to the question of what could I do this year? I want to be more successful so that other people and reach more people so that I can model what I'm doing and and facilitate it for many more people.
Would be awesome.
Yeah.
I, I think you're absolutely correct, and it's the artists of all
Mhm.
persuasions,
Yes.
dictators, and I'll call them the bad guys, are the most afraid of, because they're the ones that touch people's heart. They're the ones that help them think differently. And it's one of the reasons that I'm a writer, because
Mm.
I love words. I love going into other stories and seeing how things could be done differently. So these are
Yeah.
worthwhile goals. I'm excited about the books that I'm launching this year. And I guess for me, this year is about putting into practice a lot of what I learned from you last year in Author Boss Academy. And that has that has grown me. So I want to point this out to our viewers and our listeners, that what we're talking about is stretching yourself beyond your comfort zone. And trust me, my comfort zone had a real tight hold on me. But if you believe in your work and if you believe in what you're doing, it's an insult to your own work not to do what's necessary for people to find it, and for you to find the people who are ready to be helped by what you do.
Yes. Everybody who's watching, that's to you.
Yes.
And you, Barbara, and me.
Absolutely.
It is.
You don't get to do it once and then quit. You get to,
Yeah.
as you said earlier in another context, it's about building that habit, building that muscle so that you continue to show up. You continue to complete your tasks. You finish the book, you finish the blog, you finish the website, you finish making friends with other people, all the things that we do in order to be part of a community.
Yes. And living in that space of wanting to create something bigger and being happy with where I'm at the same time.
Because that is a critically important point. That if we keep postponing happiness until some unknown future event, it's never going to happen.
Mm-mm.
And the process is where the joy is.
That was a huge lesson. And I feel like I'm still learning it all the time. Like, oh, as I'm reaching for excellence instead of perfection, realizing that in each moment I can achieve excellence.
Yes.
In every moment, present moment. Whereas perfection is something that's always in the future. And to strive for excellence instead of perfection, and be okay with whatever my excellence is right now, because it'll be better in the future. But I can only be as good as I can be right now with the context and what I know and how I'm growing, and just keep striving for that excellence.
And, we now know that it takes about 10,000 hours to do anything with really mastery. So we know that we will get better, but sometimes it doesn't feel like it. When we see the beginnings, we think, oh God, I'm never going to be able to do that. Talk about that.
Okay. One of the biggest things in my life was learning that everything is fixable.
Oh,
so
that's a good phrase.
Yeah, it was at a job I started a few years ago. And as a former or a working perfectionist, a recovering perfectionist, I had a coworker who was older than I was, and I looked up to her, and she's like, I would make a mistake and I'd be like, oh no, I made a mistake. The consequences are going to be drastic and dramatic.
Yeah. We'll edit. Okay.
It's okay. It's okay. We're in the middle.
We're in the middle.
What's happening in the middle of this conversation about mistakes happening?
And everything can be fixed. Are going nuts outside for no good reason except they can. So you just have a perfect example of how a really good podcast is not perfect.
Yes, everything is fixable.
Everything is fixable. And that's a wonderful thing to remember. So talk more.
Yeah. And it works with because I told this to my sister, because I'm the oldest child. And so there's a thing, and she has children now too. And she's like, how do I help my oldest child with this one thing? And a lot of it's around perfectionism and trying to be the best and not making mistakes. And I was like, well, I would tell him everything is fixable. Because when I learned that, I was like, oh, it allowed me to do the thing, not do it correctly, and then make it better.
So that's perfect. So read those steps again.
Yeah. Complete the thing.
Right.
Make the mistake, because it won't be perfect the first time, and then fix it and make it better. That's like, oh, if it's not the way I want it to, fix it. And the way I can do this spiritually, because she came back to me and she was like, well, you can't fix everything. If he didn't want the ant to die and then his brother comes and kills the ant, then it's not fixable. The ant's dead. And and so I've spent a lot of time reading. I've read a lot of spiritual books. I was raised LDS in a very conservative environment. And it did not, like, when I go to church, I don't go to church very often now, but when I do on occasion with my husband who is LDS, when I go, I feel terrible. I'm like, oh, my soul's contracting. So as I left the church, as we call it, the church, capital T, capital C, I did a lot of reading. And one of the most powerful for me was Conversations with God by Neil Donald Walsh.
Yes.
And the one that I read, like Home with God, which is later in the series, I read that a long time ago, and it didn't resonate with me because I wasn't able to to see it.
Right.
And then I wasn't able to get it. And then a few years ago, I reread it. And so basically the part that I got out of it is that, and I don't know, this is telling you how I was able to believe everything is fixable. And it might be something else for you, but this is my personal experience of how I was able to get to that spot. And it was realizing that heaven is, or the afterlife, or whatever you want to call it, the non-physical is the exact same as where we are currently. Only one has matter and one does not.
Yeah,
exactly.
Exactly.
Like there isn't, and I was like, oh, this is heaven, and like this is heaven, and a lot of people wouldn't. This is heaven made physical, and it's not going to be. And then when I go into the afterlife, it will be the same, and so it's not. I don't have this concern about what's going to happen. What I don't have a fear about death as much anymore. I mean, I'm still human, so yes, there is still some fear, but it's not. I'm like, oh, everything is fixable because this everything is like goes forever. Everything's infinite. So, which is so simplifying it. Like it's such a bigger understanding in my head than I'm saying.
Sometimes it's hard to language.
Yeah, it's hard to. The other thing though is this, which this I think is a little bit easier because a lot of it comes back to perfectionist. But you know how everybody says, "Oh, nobody's perfect." That's a very blanket statement. Like if you say nobody's perfect, and I would say most people would agree nobody's perfect. Like nobody's perfect. But the thing is, if nobody is perfect, like if perfect is here in your mind and nobody is perfect, everybody's here. That also means the other side of nobody is perfect is everybody is perfect.
Okay.
Everybody is perfect because if you're going to make a blanket statement like that, then it's relative. So you're like, oh, let's say perfection is here. Nobody's perfect or everybody's perfect if you're looking on this side or this side, depending on what you're looking at. So that, I don't know, all those things combined into my head.
Well, it does make a difference, and it's very freeing. I remember very clearly when I realized that once you pass over, you're still learning, you're still growing. Just because you don't have a physical body anymore doesn't mean the lessons stop. And part of the reason I got so clear on this was because both of my parents, who both have passed over, would come to visit, and I could feel the difference in them. My mother has become this bright, shining light that says whatever she did on the other side, she has evolved hugely. She's now angel caliber. So it doesn't end with this life. You don't have to get all the lessons, and there's no such thing as just right or wrong lessons because there's so many layers. For example, let's go back to your nephew who's heartbroken because his aunt's dead. So maybe one of the things that would help this young man is, well, maybe we should do a ceremony, a memorial for your little aunt, because his spirit went to aunt heaven, even though his body's not here. And then you can talk to him and you'll know that he's still alive or something like that.
Yes. And that's where the afterlife part came to me. Like that's the connection I was making, because the aunt isn't gone.
The aunt
and
is physical, isn't
yeah.
visible, but the situation in which this young man is struggling is fixable.
Yes.
So actually,
and
yeah,
the aunt being dead isn't right or wrong.
right, exactly.
Right. So like it's not right or wrong for the aunt to be alive here or not, or in the spiritual or non-physical. Like it's, the aunt is still is, and therefore it's not a big deal if it's not here right here and it's physical, because it's still there. And I had a similar thing with you where my grandparents passed away, and mine wasn't like they haven't come to visit me a whole lot, but in my body I was like, okay, my grandma passed away, can I still feel her love? And it's a very specific feeling of love. Like it wasn't just anybody's love. It was my grandmother's love.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, when I stop and in any present moment and say, okay, can I still feel my grandmother's love? I can. Like it's a very specific love. And then I had a dream one time where she came back to me in the dream. And then in the dream, she transformed into a Native American dude.
Wow.
Yeah. I was like, whoa, in the dream. And the spirit was like, this is me now.
Yes.
And I was like, and then I was like, well, let me see how the love feels. And I was like, the love feels the same. Okay.
Well, this is a good point, because what we're experiencing is an energy. So love is an energy, and the particular type of love that you experienced from your grandmother,
yes,
is a type of energy. It's like a flavor.
and
it's still very real and distinctive. That's how, when a spirit comes to visit, you know who it is, because they have unique energy signature.
Yes. So that all comes back to everything is fixable.
Everything is fixable.
Because the ultimate thing that I guess we would believe that we can't fix is death. And if you don't have to worry about that, then everything else is fixable. You know, you can update your podcast, you could edit it, you can republish your book, you can apologize.
Yeah, exactly.
You can, and change your behaviors and say, oh, that wasn't how I want to behave, I'm going to do it better next time, and really apologize and then forgive yourself for making the mistake, and acknowledging that all of that all goes back to it's fixable.
Thank goodness everything is fixable.
Yes.
And I want to lean on this point a little bit, because there's so many things in the world that we see that do not look fixable.
Yes.
And I just know with every cell in my being that everything on this planet that we think is wrong can be corrected, can be healed, can be reversed. And it begins with you doing that for yourself. So it's a lot of the practice is about loving who you are, accepting the realities, not expecting perfection. And
or acknowledging that you're already perfect.
We're perfect.
Yes. Yeah, like acknowledging. I agree with you, because I think a lot of people, especially spiritual people, it's very hard to look at the current reality and not be defeated or overwhelmed or like, what are we going to do? And I did the Strength Finders test a while back,
Mm-hmm.
if anybody has done it. One of my strengths is focus. So the focus strength means that I can put my eye on a goal, and anything that doesn't help move me towards that goal,
Right.
I let go.
Just the focus.
And yeah, because I'm like, well, that doesn't actually help me with this,
Mm-hmm.
lead to this. And so, in a very, very practical way, and this is actually what my spirituality is based on and everything, like very practical. Like, my question is, does this make me a better person, or does this bring me closer to my highest self or not?
Okay.
Does this action in any moment and make it me, better or feel happy or raise my vibration or not? And so, um, a while back, I realized if I want to transform the world, which I do, it's not useful for me to be angry or disappointed or feel yucky about the current state of the world. Like, it doesn't benefit myself or anybody, because I am somebody who I feel more motivated from positive energy.
Good.
Some people are motivated at some level by things not being good. Like, I dated somebody and he's like, this isn't right, I'm going to fix it. And that motivated him. So that could be you. But for me, I am not motivated by seeing how wrong things are.
Mm-hmm.
And because I do want to change it, I already know it's wrong. Like, I already know there's problems. I don't
Right.
have to saturate myself in that. So what I do is I just say, okay, well, what can I do right now to that will lead me towards a transformed world?
Yes.
And I just let go everything else. And I'm like, okay,
Perfect.
not 100%, obviously.
Right.
Like, I still get upset, but I do my best to be like, this is, I am taking action, doing something that I know will make a difference, helping creative people make money, and putting them into positions of power
Mm-hmm.
financially will make a difference for all the things that are wrong in the world. And so I don't think about those things. I don't give them my energy or attention as best I can. I just put my energy and attention into raising my vibration. I believe in dragons because it makes me happy. I believe in dragons because it makes me happy. I'm like, this is believing in dragons makes me a better person.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my whole my whole spiritual belief is built around what makes me a better person.
Exactly. And what makes your vibration higher, what
Yes.
makes you feel good. And the whole notion of being grateful for what is
Mm-hmm.
as a prelude to being able to change it into something better is the starting point. Wherever we are, we have to find all the gifts and the blessings, because there's gifts and blessings in everything, even when it hurts, even when it's uncomfortable, even when we don't like it.
Yes. And it's usually a reason. Like, I don't know how long this interview wanted to go, Barbara, but I could talk about this kind of stuff all day. Like, I was working in a small company. My boss, my boss quit, and the small company is in, like, he was the VP of sales and marketing, and I was below him, and I was the only one below him. And he quit. And so I applied to his job because I had essentially, as an assistant, I had essentially been doing his job
Right.
for like 6 years.
Yes.
And so I applied to do his job, and the owner was like, oh, I'm going to hire somebody to take care of, I'm going to hire somebody to replace him. And I was like, okay, fine. And then like 2 months went by and he didn't hire anybody. And when I reached back out to him, he's like, yeah, because things are still going fine. And I was like, yeah, that's because I'm doing my job and his job, and I'm doing them well,
Yes,
but
exactly.
not getting paid for it. And this was like really negative for me. Like, I was like, this is really frustrating, really upsetting.
Sure.
And it was so frustrating and upsetting that I was like, how can I had this question, this burning question of how can I have more time to start a new business? Because I am smart and I have things to offer.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like burning. And all of a sudden, after like 3 or 4 weeks of like, how can I get this more time? Bam, I had a solution. And it was sublet my apartment for the summer, quit my job, and go to a farmhouse that my dad owned for the summer and just work on my business.
Right.
And so I quit my job. I put my apartment up to sublet on Craigslist, found somebody who was going to pay me $500 more per month than I paid for the apartment itself. So I was making money. I went to an agency and I was like, hey, I'm going to go for the summer, but I'll be back. Will you be able to find me a position? She said, yes. I quit. And then I quit my job. And my boss was like, hey, if you want to come back later, the position will be open for you. And he gave me health insurance through the end of the year and the summer and the end of the year, because he recognized later that he should have given me the job.
Yes, he should.
But so then I went to Idaho, and guess what? I met the man who I'd been waiting for my whole life.
How perfect is that?
And everything came together, and he had lost his job a few years earlier, and we never would have met if all these negative things hadn't happened. Like my boss hadn't quit, and my other boss hadn't given me the promotion, and my husband hadn't lost his job of 24 years, and all these terrible things at the time had to happen in order for me to have my husband and the support that he gives me and allowing me to start a business. His support is unconditional. And it's amazing. And so now I'm like, okay, all these negative things had to happen, negative things, because the universe was facilitating
bringing
what it needed to facilitate. And sometimes what seemed like a bad thing actually was a good thing. Yeah. So when I look back on it, so that's how I try to be all the time now, where I'm like, hey, this might feel negative, but I don't know the bigger picture.
Okay. Excellent.
Okay.
And that's what the Good Vibe Challenge is all about, is recognizing that regardless of what's happening around us, the universe has our best interest at heart, especially when we have formed an intention and are working towards it.
Yes. And how good is barking at raising our vibrations? Yeah.
And making me feel safe and secure, because nobody's going to be able to sneak up on me.
Yeah. Yes.
And I love them and they love me. And the fact that they follow me all around the house makes me feel very loved and cared for.
I love gratitude.
Absolutely.
Oh, it's so transformative. Okay.
Is there anything you would like to say to our viewers before we go?
I think I've said quite enough. I could talk about this. This is like my passion. I could talk about this all day. So
me too. It's fun. So I'm having a ton of fun. And thank you so much from all of us on the 31-Day Good Vibe Challenge for coming and sharing how you do it and what difference it's made in your life. I really appreciate all the work you're doing in the world, Ella.
Thank you so much. And anybody, if you want to reach out, what I will say is if you want to reach out, feel free to reach out. I love connecting with like-minded people.
Thank you. All right. We'll see you soon.